Hello, my friends. Happy Sunday. So glad to see you. How's your week been? It's been good? Yeah? Well, here's what I thought for today. I thought that we would wrap up our whole big giant stories of Joseph, right? You know, we've been talking about Joseph for a couple of weeks now, several weeks, because it's a big, huge story. And so I thought we'd do like a little review and finish it off. Are you with me? Yeah? All right. Who remembers who Joseph's dad was? Yeah. Jacob, you are so right. How many sons did Jacob have? 1, 2, 3, 12. 12 sons. Could you imagine? That was so many brothers. Sometimes they got along, sometimes not so much. There was one thing that made those brothers a little angry. Do you guys remember? Yeah. Jacob, he picked Joseph as his favorite, and he gave him this beautiful coat of many, many colors, and that made those brothers not so happy, right? Then, here's Joseph. He had dreams. And do you remember what those dreams were? So, he had 11 brothers. He had a dream that the stalks of grain, there was 11 over here and 1 over here, and the 11 bowed down to the 1. And then there was the sun, the moon, and 11 stars, and those stars bowed down to 1. Uh-oh. That did not make those brothers very happy, especially because Joseph, he wasn't the oldest brother. He was number 11 in line, so he was almost the youngest. He only had 1 younger brother, and so they were not happy with him. And so one day when Joseph went out to find his brothers, they made a plan. A deep, dark, dirty plan. They threw him in a pit, and they were going to leave him there. But one of the brothers said, wait, instead of leaving him there, why don't we sell him to some travelers that came by? So those Ishmaelites, do you remember them? We would have those little camel sounds. Too bad Mr. Chris isn't here to make all my traveling noises, right? All right, so picture that. They come by and they sell their brother Joseph. And they go back to talk to their daddy. And they tell him, they take the coat and they cover it in animal blood. And they make it look like he's been killed by an animal. So Jacob is so very sad. So off to Egypt goes Joseph. And Joseph, when he got there, he was put as a servant in a big giant house. Do you remember I did this video at Cheekwood? So there was a huge mansion behind me, right? And so that was to represent Potiphar's house. Potiphar was a big high up in the army, so he had a big beautiful house, and Joseph was there, and he would be doing a good job, and people would put him in charge. Finally, Potiphar's wife met him, and she wanted him to do things that he knew were not the right thing to do. So when he would not do the wrong thing, she told a lie. Now, have you guys ever told a lie? Yeah. Oh, not a good thing. Well, Potiphar's wife told a lie that was so bad, it got Joseph thrown in jail. So first it was a pit, now he's in jail. And he was there, again, he was doing the right thing. People were putting him in charge. And 2 people came down into the jail that were sent from Pharaoh's house. Now, do you guys remember who Pharaoh is, right? He was the king. He was in charge of all of Egypt. It was, everything that went on, he was in charge of it. He was the royal, the highest of all. And his baker and his butler were both thrown in jail. And one day, they each had a dream. And they're like, what do these dreams mean? I can't imagine. And Joseph says, I can tell you what they mean. But it's not because I have any tricks or magic or special gifts. It's because I have the one true God. And God will tell you what these dreams mean. He will tell me and I will tell you. And he did. And they both came true. So the butler ended up going back up to live in the palace with Pharaoh. And as he's leaving, Joseph said, now, butler, please remember that I helped you by telling you your dream. Please remember me. And so he goes back up to live with Pharaoh. And does he remember? No, he doesn't. And it's 2 more years. And Joseph is still down in jail. Then somebody else has a dream. You guys remember who it was? It was Pharaoh. Yes, okay. So here's Pharaoh. He has a dream. And he calls in all the wisest men in Egypt and pulls them in and asks them, please tell me what this dream means. nobody is able to tell him. Finally, the butler says, "Wait, I remember when I was in jail. There was a man there, and his name was Joseph. He will be able to tell you what his dream means." So they go down and they get Joseph out of jail, bring him up to the palace. And I love this part, because here's Pharaoh in charge of everything, right? The highest. And what does Joseph say? He says, "My God will help me tell you your dream. My God is the power. I don't have power on my own. It's because of God. God, the one true God, will be able to tell you what this dream means." So this was just last week. We talked about this dream, and there were 7 cows that came out of the water, and they were strong. All right. Can you guys show me like you're strong? Yeah. All right. And then there were 7 that were weak. Oh, those poor little cows were weak, and they were hungry, and they were sick. Oh no. All right. Then there was 7 big pieces of grain, and they grew, and they were strong. And then 7 weak, kind of sickly kind of grain. And so Pharaoh's like, "What does this mean, Joseph? Tell me, what does this dream mean?" And Joseph says, "God is telling you that there will be 7 years of plenty." So that's what those big, strong animals, that big, strong grain represent. 7 years of plenty when the crops will grow, the animals will be strong and healthy. But then there will be another 7 years of famine. And famine is when the crops don't grow. Maybe there's not enough water. Maybe bugs have eaten them. Okay, it's just going to be no crops are going to grow. And the animals, they won't have crops to eat. They don't have enough water. They become sick, and they don't provide food either. So Joseph says, "That is what your dream means. God is telling you what your dream means." And then Joseph says, "Now, Pharaoh, put somebody very wise in charge of your land so that you could take care of this." And Pharaoh says, "I know none wiser than you, Joseph." So wait, Joseph, number 11 in line of the sons, a kid who got thrown in a pit, thrown into being a servant, thrown into jail, now is going to be Pharaoh's right-hand man. All right? They give him fancy, fancy clothes, and he gives them a signet ring, the Pharaoh's ring. And the ring means that whenever he wants to make a law, he just has to stamp that ring, and he can make the laws. So here's Pharaoh, here's Joseph, just under Pharaoh. They even gave him a big chariot. You guys remember what a chariot looks like? It's like a little kind of sled thing, and then has horses that pull it, except for usually it's all covered in gold and it's beautiful, much fancier than a sled. And so he has a chariot, and he rides through the streets. And guess what the people do when they see Joseph riding by? They bow down to Joseph. Starts sounding like a dream from many, many years ago, doesn't it? Well, Joseph is in charge, and so there's 7 years of plenty, and when that happens, Joseph makes sure everybody gets fed, but he stores some grain, stores some food away, right? Because then comes the 7 years without any crops. The famine happens, and the people of Egypt are fine because of Joseph's wisdom. All right. But say this is Egypt, okay? It's a very big area, but all the area around here also has not had rain. Their crops aren't growing. And right over here is the land of Canaan. You remember who lives there? That's Jacob and all those sons and that one daughter. All right. And so that's where Jacob lived. And so Jacob goes to his sons and he's like, "Egypt has enough food. Go to Egypt and see if you can buy some food for our big giant family." He had grandchildren and all kinds of people living there that he was responsible for. And so 10 of those sons go to Egypt. And when they get there, they have to buy food. Who do you think sells the food to people? You guessed it. It was Joseph. And so Joseph looked very different. Remember the last time they saw him, they had thrown him in a pit. He was just a teenager. And now he wore very fancy headdress and clothing, and he was in charge of everything. And so the brothers come up, and Joseph's here. Guess what the brothers do? They bow down to Joseph Because that was the respectful thing to do, right? They came before someone who was like a prince, and they bowed down to Joseph, just like the dream said all those years ago. Well, Joseph knew that those were his brothers. He could recognize them. They were in the same kind of clothing. But Joseph looked very different. They didn't recognize him at first. And the story goes on, but Joseph and his brothers, they reunite. They forgive each other. They spend time together. Joseph makes sure his whole family has food to eat. I love seeing these stories in Genesis, how people don't always make the right choices. They're not perfect, just like you and me, right? We're not perfect. But they always find their way back to the path that God has for them when they trust God. All right? Joseph trusted God to answer those dreams, and he got lifted up and lifted up. Joseph believed in God and hung on to God all the way through this story. And God honored him. And through that, God took care of Jacob's whole family. There was a lot of people. All right? He took care of them all. God knew the plan. God had the plan for Joseph. He had the plan for Jacob and his family. Keep watching these stories. Keep watching as we go back. The next couple of weeks, we're going to review the whole unit of Genesis. All right, we can't do it in 1 week, so we're going to take 2 weeks, and then we'll be ready to start a new unit in June. But for the next couple of weeks, we're going to go through and make our Genesis timeline and really talk about what each of those big, giant stories of Genesis mean to us today. They're important for us to know. They're important for us to learn from. So I hope you guys will. I hope you go back and look. Read some of the stories with your mom and dad. If you want, go back and listen to them on our YouTube channel. It's TVC Kids Nashville, and it's just for kids. So it's, one of the kids said, "Can my parents watch too?" Yes, your parents can watch too, but it's meant for kids. That means there's no commercials. It's very safe. So if you guys want to go back and look at those stories before we do our review next week, go ahead, do it. You might have missed one. You never know. But I hope you guys will go back. I hope you'll just trust God. I hope you'll trust God this week to keep you on the right path, and I hope you'll love him. I love you guys, and have a great week. I'll see you next week.